I'd like to call the Lane County Board of Commissioners regular meeting to order for Tuesday, December 15th, 2015. And the first item of business is adjustments to the agenda. And I will note that we are going to pull item 5G1 from the consent calendar. It's no longer necessary because they had a change in funding stream for Territorial Highway.
61.
That was
61,
sorry. Forgot we have one item. And then we will also have a time certain at 10:30 today, so you need to keep an eye on the clock. And there will be an executive session today. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Then we will move forward with the second item, which is public hearing and resolution order 1512-1501 in the matter of adopting the FY 15-16 supplemental budget number 1, reducing and transferring appropriations. And we have Judy Williams, our budget supervisor, here. So I'll turn it over to you, Judy, and you can walk us through what we're doing here.
Thank you, Chair Bozievich and Commissioners. I'm bringing the supplemental number 1 to you this morning, and it's the first supplemental for this current budget year, 15-16. And we time bringing this to you in combination with the close of the general ledger for the prior year. So this supplemental number 1 is always a little bit larger as we're adjusting fund balances and carryover. So this is a routine item, and we do require a public hearing when there's funds that are changing for more than 10%. And in this case, we had 7 funds that were changing, and we've noticed a public hearing, and that was in the paper on December 10th. And just a very quick summary. This supplemental number 1 increases the county's total resources by $44,819,681. Expense appropriations are increasing by $34,734,671, and reserves increasing by $10,085,010. Full-time equivalent positions are increasing by 12.60. And if approved as presented, the current modified budget for 15-16 will be $602,952,443 with 1,440.96 FTE full-time equivalent positions across all funds. So with that, I'm available for questions, or we can open it for the public hearing.
Any questions for staff about the supplemental budget? If not, then I will open the public hearing. And I don't have anyone signed up for the public hearing. Then this is for the public hearing on the supplemental budget. Is there anyone that wishes to speak to the supplemental budget this morning? Seeing none, then I will close the public hearing. And we'll move on to discussion and possible motion by commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of Order 15-12-15-01 in the matter of adopting the fiscal year 15-16 supplemental budget number 1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. So with that, we'll move on to item number 3, which is public comment. I have 2 people signed up for public comment right now. If you'll come forward and state your name and where you're from for the record, and you'll have your 3 minutes. The first person is Con Magnuson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sorry to be back here, but the situation of mine has grown into a bigger problem.
Con, can you state your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Conrad Magnuson. I live in Elmira.
Thank you.
I got to fill in the fact that in May of 1980, that piece of property I said I developed, of which was never taken in by the tax department. And it has to do with the fact that I placed a mobile home on it legally. And this all came about with the tax department in May of this year. And I was contacted by, I'm not sure who it is, but for sure it could have been a Tara Smith, that they knew it was there. I gave them the permit numbers and everything else. They failed to do their job. In the meantime, I filed the final partitioning of my airport. I paid my taxes that I had to pay on 2601. The assessor's office received it, sent the paperwork to the planning department, of which they accepted it. Don Nichols, my surveyor and engineer on the project, got the paperwork together. My wife and I signed it in September, which made it legal. Everything was fine. Then I got the letter from the legal department on the 27th of November threatening me with having to turn over proper paperwork to the county for the trailer house, which all they had to do was take the numbers, go to the planning department, it was all there. So I got this, which was pretty threatening. I take it as a threat using the legal department. But the problem is the tax department tied up my petition after the fact. Now, you got to understand, I've had people looking at my property to buy it, and it is not even legal yet because of the assessor's office over a 42-year-old trailer. It's 42 years old, and they forgot to pick it up. Quote of Mike Cowles, I did not have to do anything till 2000. We did not have to pick that up. Now, I understand he's an elected official, but his people, Josh Gaddis and Tyra Smith, they work for that department. Now, this Josh Gaddis, which I finally found it, he drew up a map of my place, of which I have a copy of it here. He even shows the petitions on it. Shows them. He didn't even figure right. He added in extra land. He told me I had to have my place surveyed. I didn't know how much property I had. He doesn't even know how to look on a map to see that that was a road that was already there that was part of it. Now, in my opinion, I feel that Lane County is using their legal department and tax department to extort me. They're holding up something they have no right to hold up. Don Nichols is involved in it again. He said the assessor has no right to stop that petition that was filed in September that I worked on for 5 years, jumping through all of the hoops of Lane County. And if you people would like to see it sometime, I'll bring you 3 boxes of paperwork. You could go through every piece of it, emails and everything else. When are you going to do something before I have to take other steps? I can't get a meeting with him and the assessor until January the 8th. Is that right? They took my survey stakes. They took 2 foot of my ground. Now, if I took 2 foot of Lane County's ground, you'd have your attorneys on me. I have not got any communication that they're going to pay the surveyor's bill, so I guess I may have to go to trial on that. I mean, when is somebody going to wake up that you've got people down here that don't care? You have you behind you in their legal department to do anything at their bidding. I can't believe the legal department wrote that letter not checking out what it was over. I just can't. And I have the paperwork they want. The trailer doesn't even belong to me. It belongs to my daughter. I tried to tell them that in May. Did they tell you that? I bet they didn't. So what are we going to do? I have the permits that's signed off by Lane County for that trailer house. I have the map. That thing was drawn up and filed by the surveyor in 1980. I have the real numbers of the property that was signed in 1980. It was filed. Real number 1071. That was done in 1980. It even is attached, it has a number on the paper that it was accepted, 802-22552. That means it's a matter of public, it's a record. You tell me that the tax department does not have to do anything? I can't take this anymore. And I'll gladly give, so everybody can see it, I'll give him this piece of paper they wanted done by the tax department, so everybody knows it's there. Something they could have looked up. If you want any of this paperwork, gentlemen, I'll bring you boxes to look at. But this has got to quit. 25 years. Started with Ken Howe. They tried to shut my airport down twice, and I was legal. Finally, thanks to the state of Oregon, they legalized it. It took me 12 years once the state said they had to do something to get it done, and now I'm still waiting. And the amount of money, that extra that we had to pay, I'll give you one. The planning department wanted my road. Then they sent me an email, oh, we don't have the right to take that road. They called my front of my property an estuary. An estuary. It wasn't. Then they said that under the termination, and you ought to look into this, development. Because they said I was developing a wetlands, which I've been farming for years. They said any grading, moving, plowing, or anything of that ground constitutes development, which is illegal. So you ought to look into that one. And I thank you.
Thank you, Con. Laura, did you want to speak today, or you? Okay. Is there anyone else that wanted to address it? Mike?
Yeah, sorry, I might have put my name on the wrong sheet. Good morning. Thank you. I'm Mike McFadden from Eugene. Thank you, Con, for teeing me up a little bit. So later today, there's going to be a public hearing on some proposed language to be added by Council Dingle. And I'll speak more in detail to that at that time in that public hearing. But I use this as kind of like an opportunity to give some preliminary thoughts. And so just listening to what Con had to say, you know, I think that amongst a lot of people, the general sort of consensus is that...
Can you do your name and address just for the record?
Mike McFadden from Eugene.
Thanks.
And there's a sort of building in general sort of realization or consensus from a lot of people who, and before I get off onto this, Jag, I want to say there's a lot of dedicated public servants out there, people who are in bureaucracy, who mean well and do a good job, and so I'm not painting with a broad brush describing everyone. I mean, I think that Administrator Mokrzycki and Director Hayes are both really good examples of really dedicated public servants who do a really good job for their citizens who they represent or work for. But anyway, the point I want to get at is that I think there's this growing sort of trend in bureaucracy or in government today, and it takes place on the local level, you know, the state level, the federal level, where there's a trend of bureaucracy and rulemaking becoming more and more authoritarian, becoming more and more autocratic, becoming more and more unaccountable or out of touch, unreachable. And I think that, you know, a lot of people have become more and more disengaged with politics because they feel less and less able to achieve any kind of result or be heard or felt listened to. A lot of people feel really frozen out of the political process. And so, you know, I have long had a lot of concerns about actions this board has taken, actions that previous administrators have taken regarding public spaces in Lane County, particularly this space, which is somewhat of the political center of Lane County. And so, you know, I know it's been really rainy lately, but on the next sunny day, you all should treat yourselves to a break, go outside, get some fresh air. I know you probably have all done it before, but take a moment to walk around the plaza, read the inscriptions on the bricks, read the inspirational language of many prominent people in political history, both in Oregon and nationwide and worldwide. And try to, like, not just read them literally, but take the spirit of them in aggregate, in whole. What is their message? What do they say about us as a culture? What are our values as a society? And so when you hear voices within your organizations calling for more extrajudicial language to handle situations, more authoritarian sort of measures to handle things that might become problematic, I urge you to reject those voices. We're a nation of laws. We're a nation of due process. We have a whole structure of dealing with things that don't resort to sort of delegating plenary power over to bureaucrats who often abuse it, who often get tied up in their own petty squabbles with one another or struggles for power or influence, and then use government power, which was given to them in public interest for their own private interests. And, I think that a lot of people realize that. A lot of people see that. A lot of people are frustrated. I'm a farmer. My profession is agriculture, but there's a lot of farming wisdom that really helps a person to look at many situations in life with a broad brush of common sense and to really dig down and to see the truth in the bottom of things. And so, I don't know where any of you all personally stand, but this is a problem. I'm sure all of us in this room would acknowledge that there are people out there doing these kind of things I've described, and we're sick of it, and we've had enough, and we're coming to change it all. And you should join us or step out of the way. Thank you.
That's everyone I have signed up for public comment. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board in regular public comment this morning? Seeing and hearing none, then we'll move on to Commissioners' response to public comments and/or other issues and remonstrance. Commissioner Lyken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, I was in Portland at the Leadership Summit, and I would say that two things during that entire day were extremely memorable. The first one was 7:30 in the morning. Associated Oregon Counties had their legislative committee meeting. I'd just like to report that the AOC Legislative Committee voted unanimously to join with Lane County in filing an amicus brief and petition regarding the Handy case. Also heard that the League of Oregon Cities is moving in the same direction, and I heard from several commissioners that it's likely that several counties on their own will also be prepared to file an amicus brief as well. And I think part of it is that before the Supreme Court, and part of it again is that this would set a precedent and that we haven't seen before. And I think as stated before, I believe the legislature and our judges are exempt from the very issue that the two judges ruled on as far as the Court of Appeals is concerned. The other memorable piece that really to me stood out because when you heard the speeches, a lot of the speeches were kumbaya, and we're doing this, we're doing that, we're moving forward, we're making positive gains, until Senator Courtney, who obviously is not running for re-election, the longtime president of the Senate, decided to speak his mind. And I thought that was actually refreshing. And one of the things he mentioned was the fact that you have the business community, you have the representative community, the unions, and others that are basically coming to a head, where he actually declared it as a potential civil war, which I'm not sure I'd go that far, but I appreciated his comments on where we're going, that people seem to want to file different measures, refer them out, instead of just get into a room and actually have a dialogue and discussion and see what we can come up with, whether it's increased taxes, whether it's opportunities for the business community, this type of thing, instead of just filing referrals and not even having a discussion with each other. So it was very interesting to all of a sudden hear from Senator Courtney, and it sure changed the landscape a little bit, and I got to tell you, people sure walk out of there. In fact, that was the one speech that people were commenting on and talking about more than any other that I heard the entire day. So it was very interesting, but I was very pleased with the AOC's decision, and again, that was a unanimous vote, and it was a strong quorum that was there as well. That's what I have. Thank you.
Others? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I one time used Floyd Brzezinski's mic in the House, and I got in trouble for it. So am I okay using Commissioner Lyken's mic?
Thank you.
Back in in the summer of this year, I had a chance to do the Walk for the Cure, which is the Susan B. Komen Walk for the Cure. A lot of people walked on that, and prior to the walk, I had a chance to stand with Mayor Kitty Piercy, and she and I did not walk together, but we talked about the importance of supporting research and cure for breast cancer. And subsequent to that, Mayor Piercy was diagnosed with breast cancer, and this week she will be going in for what is a relatively minor surgery, I understand, but she is going in for surgery this week. And I just want to just reinforce that my thoughts are with her as she goes through surviving cancer, and I look forward to further working with Mayor Piercy for the future. I think we work together on the Poverty and Homelessness Board, among other things, and she has been a powerful and strong influence for the needy and the folks in poverty in our community. And I hope you would all join me in thinking about Mayor Piercy and praying, if that is your style, if that is your wish, to grant her a speedy recovery. Thank you.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Mokajski, I would ask maybe under your announcements, if you could let the board know what you've done to date for Mr. Magnuson and the meeting set up, and hopefully what you're hoping to achieve. Thank you.
Any other remonstrance? And I'll just make note that I was at Veneta City Council meeting last night, and they voted 5-0 to co-adopt our ordinance on the Fern Ridge Community Policing District, and to have the city be part of that. And I think that'll continue that process. We have the hearing coming up in January. It was nice to see the city move forward unanimously on that. You know, Con, I'm sure we'll be talking. We have quite a bit over the last several years. And I, you know, apologize for some of the issues that have been brought to you by a county. I don't think it's always intentional or meaning to pile on, but it seems like you're the one person that has suffered from everything from a great all that was doing ditch work, getting a property pin, which is at one department, to another department that might be causing issues around tax certifications. But it all seems to be you that's had to suffer through these various mishaps, and also my apologies, and we will get it figured out. And you know, I've been working on this for a while, so hopefully you'll hear some positive resolution soon. So if there's no further Commissioner's response or remonstrance, we'll move on to emergency business. And we do have one item of emergency business, and we were able to get that up on the website a couple days ago, and that is item 5A, which is order 1512-1511 in the matter of awarding a contract to Motorola Solutions for installation of emergency call management system. And I believe we've got Debbie Holler and some folks from the Sheriff's Office here. So if you want to briefly describe what we'll be considering.
Well, good morning, Chair Bozovich and Commissioners. With me today is John Hill, our Sports Services Manager, and Paula Bearden, our Contract Administrator. The Sheriff's Office is bringing a contract with Motorola Solutions to the board today as emergency business. This is the last board meeting of the year, and the independent emergency dispatch phone system is in desperate need of replacement. And so Jonna has been negotiating, if you've read the memo that I attached, for quite some time to get a replacement for that. And she was able to get some discounted pricing through the WISCA agreement, which expires on December 31st, which brings us here today. So, again, you received that memo from Jonna detailing the timeline, the process she's gone through to secure the contract we're bringing forward today. So we're requesting the board approves this motion to award the contract. If you have any specific questions, Jonna is the subject matter expert on that, and she can answer those for you. Thank you.
Any questions about the contract? Seeing none, is there somebody that wishes to make a motion?
Mr.
Stewart?
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of Order 15-12-15-11 in the matter of awarding a contract to Motorola Solutions, Inc. for installation of an emergency call works call management system.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
So that moves us on to the consent calendar, less item 6D1. And these are items that are considered routine. You can go on our website and click View Material to see the detail of each item, but these are usually passed with a motion with no discussion. So is there somebody that wishes to move approval of the consent calendar?
I'd move approval of the consent calendar as amended, pulling item D1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Moving right along. So that brings us down to item 7A, which is Order 1512-1509 in the matter of awarding contracts for behavioral health enhancement services for the period of January 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2017. And looks like we have Karen Gaffney here.
Good morning, Chair Bozovich and Commissioners. I'm here with you today. These contracts come up through our Trillium Behavioral Health Division of Health and Human Services. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the process and the contracts, and then I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have. As you know, part of our work with setting up our coordinated care organization back in 2012 was to provide some capital for their risk reserves, and with the transition to Centene, that was returned to the county, and our commitment was to take those dollars and invest them in enhancing behavioral health services in the community, specifically for people who are on the Oregon Health Plan and in our community. So the contracts that we bring to you today are part of our reinvestment of those dollars out into community services. As the packet describes, there were three particular goal areas or priorities that we issued an RFP asking for providers to respond to. One was in the area of integrating behavioral health and primary care projects that would do that in the community. The second was in the expansion of behavioral health services, so to really target where we needed more services and submit proposals in that area. And then the third was an implementation of recovery models, particularly expanding the use of peer-delivered services. Your packet includes in attachment A a list of the contractors who were selected through that RFP process. And as I review the list, it really is a nice assortment of services that, particularly in the area of expanding needed behavioral health services, we have several projects that are targeted in the rural areas of Lane County. Others that target specific cultural populations and communities, so that really does enhance our ability to deliver critical behavioral health services across the county. So I think I'll pause there, and I'm happy to discuss any of the particular projects if you have questions or go through that list. But that's our request today, is to award those contracts out of that RFP process.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Lycan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, I'm just looking at the contract award list, and it says Child Center. Is this a Child Center located in Springfield?
It is. This particular project will expand their services to Junction City and Veneta.
Very good. That is great to know. I'm obviously I've been a big fan of the Child Center for a long time, and so I'm very pleased to see that they do very, very good work. So this is excellent. I just wanted to clarify that that's exactly who that was, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Ms. Gaffney. I don't have any questions. Just wanted to do a little bit of a call out to something that not many people are fully aware of. Our Mental Health Advisory Committee, Local Drug and Alcohol Policy Committee. Kind of a long name with the MHEC-LP DAC. But it's a committee that is a committee of professionals who, as well as service receivers, who work together every month to provide a really high level of advice to your department and to the Board of County Commissioners. They occasionally will come before us and talk. I'm in my 4th year as the county liaison, non-voting member of that board. But I just wanted to call out that board is becoming more and more robust in its recommendations and more attuned to very specific needs in our community. Each of the board members has spoken about our particular attention to behavioral health issues and funding and supporting behavioral health response for the long haul. And the Mental Health Advisory Committee, Mental Health Advisory, Local Drug and Alcohol Policy Committee is instrumental in helping us to do the research and helping us make the decisions. So just wanted Karen to do a quick call out to that committee. You sit in that committee quite often,
And thank you, Chair Bozovich and Commissioner Farr. We have a number of opportunities to involve citizens in our process, and that is certainly one of the places that we do that. Is in our short version is the Mental Health Advisory Committee, but yes, it does have a much longer title, and they are integral in proposing to you a mental health biennial plan, which they did, and many of the priorities that are reflected in this list are also reflected in that plan, as well as our community health improvement plan and the priorities that the board has directed, both around enhancing behavioral health services as well as really looking at some of the rural issues and expanding services there.
Absolutely, and the reason that I mentioned that, Mr. Chair, is that I noticed 2 members of that committee were part of the RFP process, part of the decision making on the RFP process. Well done in engaging the committee. It's not new that you would engage them, but well done in doing so. And I look forward to working more closely with them. A large part of their strategic plan for this current year is to work more closely with public safety, and that type of integration between departments is absolutely essential, particularly in the area of behavioral health. Thank you.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Karen, I wanted to say thank you and kudos to the services that were picked, and the rural component and the diversity, and also focusing on the behavioral health. I think folks maybe don't realize, but this is all new dollars, so this is going to be additional services that we provide. And I believe the board recognized with our goal system that we wanted to find a way to improve mental health, behavioral health services. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And with that, I would move approval of Order 15-12-15-09 in the matter of awarding contracts for behavioral health enhancement services for the period January 1st, 2016 through December 31st, 2017.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion to the motion? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a note that this is approximately $1.2 million of services toward behavioral health issues in the community. Is that a correct number?
I'm going to trust your math on that. I did not add it before we came, but yes, that's very close, Commissioner.
It's definitely within the target. Thank you very much.
So I just want to spend a minute to thank the staff and Trillium for putting this forward, because we have had a priority under the Community Health Improvement Plan and as part of our strategic plan for Safe and Healthy County to concentrate on expanding mental health services. And I like hearing the portion about the rural outreach and getting it out in rural areas. If I hear one issue in particular out in my district is how limited the access to behavioral and mental health services it is out in rural Lane County. So the outreach to Junction City and Veneta, the South Lane outreach, I love seeing that. But in particular, I like seeing the peer-provided services. We just recently saw headlines where the City of Eugene Police Department is now going to identify their police officers that are veterans, so that veterans that are, they're dealing with on the street can identify and realize they're talking to a peer. That connection peer-to-peer for mental health services is so important and is such an excellent way of getting people to feel comfortable to talk about the issues they're having, so we don't have issues that are buried and crop up later in cases like, Umpqua Community College or, Brian Babb, where we're not dealing with things well. And that's such an important thing, these peer-provided services. So I appreciate that was one of the concentrations in moving this forward.
Thank you, Chair Bozovich. That was very well stated. I think it's, we have seen across the country and certainly across our community an expansion of the use of peers, and it is one of those win-wins. It's a great opportunity for people who have lived experience to be able to share that with others in the community, and then, of course, as you described too, on the receiving end for people who need that connection.
Thank you. If there any further discussion of the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. So that moves us on to Public Works. Item 8A, which is a report from the 2015 Lane County Fair. I believe we've got Corey Buller, who's our fair manager and division manager for the fair, and I believe you probably have a bunch of guests.
All 5 board members.
So I don't know if Corey, you want to introduce some of the folks that are out there but do it to a mic so it's on the record.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, I will take a minute to introduce the Fair Board, which is here. So we've got Sasha Casio, Randy Thwing, Jack Harris, Cliff Kelly, and Sid Voorhees.
Welcome, gentlemen, and Sasha.
So I'd like to start off by thanking the commissioners for their support and Commissioner Stewart for attending the Fair Board meetings and contributing to those meetings. It's been great. I would also like to thank the rest of county and Public Works employees, Marcia Miller and her staff who work behind the scenes. There's a lot of people that come together to make this work each year, so we'd like to thank them. And in addition, we'd like to thank our staff who work very long hours to make this thing come together, and they do a very good job. So I'd like to give them a shout out as well. So hopefully you guys all received the report. I'll briefly go through it, highlight some of the interesting things, and then I'd like to leave some room at the end for either questions, discussions, or if you guys have any questions for the board as well. So with that being said, 2015 was the 3rd year of a date change for the Lane County Fair. We'd originally set kind of a 2 to 3 year time frame that we wanted to take a look and ascertain whether that date change was going to work and see if that was something we wanted to continue moving forward. And as you can see as we go through this report, I think that answer is yes. It worked really well. Not only did we have great weather, but we had a great fair. So our attendance was 109,562. That's up approximately 10% or slightly over 10%. With that increased attendance, we also saw an increase in gross food and beer sales. When we're talking about the food vendors that are out there, a lot of them are local, some of them are traveling. We received 22% of that food gross and 30% of the beer sales. So as you can see, food went up to 567,451 gross, which is a pretty impressive 5 days for those food vendors out there. A lot of them are local companies, families, some of them are even nonprofits. So we get split that money with them. Our concerts, the revenue was down slightly because of ticket prices and the strength of the acts. We've been much more aggressive this year, and hopefully we'll be announcing soon when we finalize. We're going to get out much earlier this year, and so we hope to see a little bit better lineup this year. Those will be coming out soon. Carnival, the gross was up over $166,000, and the net to the fair was up over $63,000. Mostly this is attributed to pre-sales, and we also did a change in the ride bracelets that everybody had a chance to use them every day, all day, instead of just a one-day special, and we really saw an increase in that. It's a great opportunity for everybody to get a chance to get on the rides instead of trying to pack them all in one day. For exhibits, we had an increase in exhibitors and entries, which is a great trend for us. We've been working on trying to improve some of those areas and get more people involved, and so seeing those increase is a great benefit to the fair. It gives people that like to walk around and look at those things an opportunity to see a little bit of everything that you don't normally get a chance to see. Sponsorships, we've been working on those for the last couple of years. They continue to be a challenge in the community. There's a lot of events that go around, and the dollars are spread out pretty thin. But we've been looking at some different opportunities and maybe some different methods this year. So we're anticipating an opportunity to maybe see an increase in those this year and doing things a little bit differently to generate more local support.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. A couple of things I did want to really bring to your attention was our partnerships, and these are things that we feel very strongly about, and a lot of times they get missed in some of the things we're doing. So we work again with Food for Lane County, and we do a special on Sunday, and during that 2 to 3 hour window, we collected over 25,310 pounds of food and donated it to Food for Lane County, which is a tremendous resource for them and a great promotion for us.
Say that number again.
25,310 pounds in slightly less than 3 hours. So it's a nice promotion. And then in addition to that, we also work with the Lane Blood Center, and we did a Pint for a Pass promotion for the last few years now. And this last July, while we were doing that, they recorded their highest July ever and collected 3,712 units of blood, which is incredible when distributed how many life-saving units that is. So included in your packet was a set of financials, and I'm not going to go over every line item, but if you have specific questions, I will. We do have some revenue that is still outstanding and some bills that are still outstanding, but we've estimated based upon those what our net is going to be. So our revenue for this year's fair was $1,214,050 estimated. Our expense would be estimated at $1,003,041, for a net of $211,009. And that is a significant jump over last year. So not only did we do a better job in revenues and getting people through the gate, but we also decreased some of our expenses, and that shows to the bottom net. So, questions, thoughts, comments?
Commissioner Stewart.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Corey, I don't have any questions. I appreciate the fact that the Fair Board was able to adjust their schedule to allow me to attend the meetings. I have really enjoyed getting to hear everything that it takes to put on the fair, and really appreciate all 5 of the, Fair Board members here today. It speaks volumes that they took time out of their day to come down and hear this report. It's great news. $211,000 of net profit is great. And some of the other things that took place, whether it's the bracelets, as a parent, it's so nice to be able to just buy a bracelet. You just buy it over the internet, and you don't have to pick which day because, we're all busy people, and some days you schedule you're going to be there, and there's no limitations. You just bring your kids and you can ride the whole day. So I think that was a huge success, and probably showed how that increase the revenue. Also, we tried out, I think this year was the first year that we used the Waymaster for the animals.
Yep.
Back there, and it was my understanding that just went over great. It was a positive piece. Dolores did a great job connecting with the folks, and no issues that were brought to my attention. So I think that was a great plus. And we got blessed with incredible weather. I don't think you shared with us what the weather did to other fairs. I mean, those 100+ days just tanked other fairs. So we were really blessed by having some phenomenal weather that our citizens and patrons could come and enjoy a great fair. So thank you for all the hard work, and hope to stay continued in these meetings and hopefully shoot for higher numbers this next year. So thank you.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Thank you very much. I think this is great news about the success of our fair last summer. And yes, a lot of it does depend on the weather, and if it's too hot, people don't come out. If it's raining, people don't come out. But I do think a lot of the success goes to you and your staff and the Fair Board members put so much time and energy into it. I really appreciate it. This year was a little bit different for me. Usually I go to the nonprofit booths and ask them if they were treated fairly, if they have any suggestions to make things better. This year I just went to commercial booths, and I went to commercial booths of some African people that came to sell various African crafts, and they had been on a circuit of fairs all over the Northwest, and they said that this was really well managed. They liked the people that they worked with. I'm not sure where in the whole organization of things that was, but they had said that, and this was at the setup point, so this wasn't at the end, and I did come back at the end. I think it was Saturday I came back, but they said that both setup as well as as the thing was really going full bore, that they were really treated well, made good money, and I thought that was good to hear from a commercial vendor that's seen other fairs. So anyway, good job. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Farr? Oh, Commissioner Lakin, I'll wait. See if we get the microphone for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Corey, it looks like classic rock still sells. So
It does, doesn't it?
And I thought it was interesting that so while Jones at the Blackhearts clearly had the largest amount of folks, what I thought was really interesting is that there was less food and beer consumed, which means I guess folks just actually wanted to watch her and see her and her band play. I just thought that was kind of interesting to notice that. I've been around the music business a little bit, but I got to tell you, I do not know who the Theory of a Dead Man is. So so that seemed to be where the food was consumed the most, and beer seemed to be pretty close there, and Under the Sun tour was consumed the most. So, but overall though, I'm really impressed though by the overall ticket sales, not only on the just the concert side, but just really as I was looking at the statistics. So we're up 10%. Food and beer is up anywhere from 8 to 9%. So a lot of great things happening here, and I must say, job well done, you and your staff. Thank you to the Fair Board for all the work you do. I mean, it's fantastic, and so I'm looking forward to the lineup this year and to see who will be here. But I did notice that right away, because we had talked about, especially on the fair tours, that classic rock is a seller, and boy, that I got to tell you, you look at those numbers and it clearly is. So. And which makes a lot of sense. That's been happening for years, and so looking forward to the lineup this next year as well. But job well done, fantastic, and keep up the great work. Thank you, Fair Board, for all your service, and as well. And in my opinion, I believe Sid Voorhees has one of the greatest first names I've ever heard. And so, anyway, thanks again. Appreciate all your service and work.
And Commissioner Likens waiting for you to book Rush.
Good luck on that.
Commissioner Farr?
I think we'll have a couple things this year that might fit.
Rush is a little out of the price range, but
Yeah.
Thank you, Corey. And, there's nothing much that I can add to what Commissioner Lycan and Commissioner Stewart have said, other than a couple of quick questions for you. Who weighed the animals this year?
Dolores was the weighmaster that watched them, and that was from the weighmaster's office.
The weighmaster's office. See, I thought that was a pretty cool addition that you guys did this year. In the past, you've had volunteers do the weighing, and I think it was Commissioner Stewart's recommendation at a Fair Board meeting. I happened to be at that meeting that, hey, why don't we use the weighmaster to weigh the animals? To me, that just fit very nicely. And I think I wasn't there when the weighing happened, but I would bet the kids just had a great time that
Dolores did a great job. She engaged with a few of the kids as that process was going on, and she really enjoyed it. And the kids really enjoyed having that conversation and seeing that person there. It was a great asset.
But to me, and I'll mention this to the Fair Board in attendance, that it just shows me that you guys are thinking all the time about how to make this fair more interesting and more participant friendly. And I think you're doing a great job changing the date, bringing the 4-H and bringing the kids back into things a little bit more than they have on an ongoing basis. To me, this year, I went to the fair and it was just an all-around enjoyable experience. The vendors, the food, the carnival rides, because the lines weren't as long this year, and I think you covered that because of the bracelets, that there was more uniform spread. And the whole thing was just a great and enjoyable experience. But I wanted to point out to the board, to Sasha and Cliff and Jack and Randy and to Sid, that you guys have a really competent fair manager working with you. Corey does a good job beyond just planning the fair and beyond just operating the fair. Something happened this week. I received a call from a local artist, Jerry Williams, very prominent artist, internationally prominent, and set designer, former professor at the University of Oregon, and he'd submitted a painting a lot of years ago that he had won a prize with a painting, and it's a beautiful painting. I have a copy of it right here. It's Mary and Joseph on the road to Bethlehem, and it's just stunning. And he'd lost it, and he'd been trying to find it for quite some time, and he just happened to send me a message, and I forwarded the message to Corey. Within 15 minutes, that painting had been located. 15 minutes is all it took Corey to find it. It's back in Jerry's possession, or soon to be.
Soon to be.
And just this is a underscore of the fact that you not only have a competent manager who's able to work with you in operating the fair, but he also takes care of the things that come up on a regular basis. I'm very proud to be associated with the Fair Board, very proud to be associated with the Lane County Fair. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll take a minute just to thank you on a job well done. I got to do the senior social again. It's always a fun event. Being there for the ice cream and all that. And I don't know who the woman that does the stilts on the tall walker, but she's always hilarious. It entertains the crowd there. But I kind of, and I will have to say, I did stand in line for Bob's, and I did get a beer from Nikasi, so I'm part of that food and beer sales.
Thank you.
But I kind of did something this year, a little unusual. While I was there, I bought a couple passes and tickets and gave them to my wife and I have a small business. And we have 2 part-time employees. Both are moms of kids that are in the preteen to teen range, and 2 apiece. So I knew that they would have liked to go, but it's one of those things. It's an affordability issue, particularly for one of the 2 whose husband has been in and out of jobs, doing union hall type work where sometimes he's working and sometimes he's not. So I gave these as gifts to them, just kind of partly as an experiment, because they were kind of my secret source, kind of like Commissioner Sorensen talking to the vendors about their experience. This was my look at the fair outside of my eyes, to hear what a family thought. And I can't tell you how much fun they had going together, because these 2 employees are old high school friends, in their 30-somethings now. And so they went, with the kids, and the kids, ran off and did all the rides and the stuff kids do, and they got to go shop and do booths and stuff like that, and they, did the photo booths. I think they got the zombie photos and all that stuff. It was, and they came back and just raved about what a great time they had. So you'll never know who I'm sending off to the fair next year.
That's perfect.
That's my secret spy, but I can tell you, just based on their experience and family experience at the fair, you have really made that, and the fair board, I want to thank you for that too, made that such a great family event. And really, purchasing, those passes for them really was not very expensive. I mean, I think they probably could have handled it themselves. It was just kind of what tipped the cart. And I think when they got there, they ended up buying additional ride tickets and all that stuff for the kids, even though I think I primed them with about, the 50 ticket packet or whatever it was that you have. They just had such a great time as a family, and the experience and that shared experience, that you talk about, you can give people things and they'll have that thing maybe for a while and it might be useful or whatever, but you can give somebody an experience is a whole different sort of thing. And it was wonderful that you guys helped me provide that experience to them. They'll never forget, that Elizabeth and I, gave them that fair experience. Their families won't. And what a great time they had. I just can't tell you how nice that was to hear back afterwards. And the Facebook pictures they posted and everything else, which kind of might have gotten your next night's attendance up, because I think they know half of the people in Veneta and Elmira, between the two of them. So it was, I think, just really well done this year.
Thank you.
And it shows in the financials. But what you don't see in the financials is that experience the family has. And that's part of what we're providing, and part of what it means in our strategic plan for the board to be a vibrant community is to have these experiential, things that people can go do that make a vibrant community. And I think, a strong county fair is part of that. And I want to, thank the board for, the changes that have been made in Midway, the extra acts, the things that are free for people to see, the family orientation. It's just become a really great event for families. So really want to appreciate you for that work.
Thank you.
So any other questions? So now I'm going to jump to something that maybe isn't quite as cheerful and all that stuff. While I have you and the full board here, we've been getting a significant amount of email traffic and push to cite some sort of temporary housing for homeless people on fairgrounds. And I understand there's a great concern that may be a conflict with not only the fair and the atmosphere there, but there's some of our major customers that use the fairgrounds. It's an event, it's the Lane County Event Center. It's the fairgrounds for 5 days a year.
Correct.
So it's really the Lane Event Center, and we have major vendors that home shows and stuff like that there's some concern there. Can you speak to some of those concerns about what might fit for the fairgrounds to assist us? I mean, the county's greatly involved in trying to provide. In fact, the city of Eugene just approved our mental health parking lot as a temporary car camp this week. We're partners with the city in trying to work on the homeless issue, but how maybe the fairgrounds isn't really the best fit for some of what we're getting emails around people desiring for us to do.
Sure. So when I first heard some of those comments or emails or suggestions or proposals or whatever you want to term it, we did send out to some of our clients a kind of a questionnaire as to what their feelings were, how they felt it would impact them or their shows or their attendance. And almost straight across the board there was concerns. Many of them are centered around the logistics of security and safety and how others would be able to come to their show that's a free show, and would they, could they, should they keep other people out from using the restrooms and walking into the halls? Security of all the goods and wares that they have was a major concern. A few clients actually felt that it would be a detriment to their show if that was on the grounds at the time. They felt people would shy away from coming down and parking in the parking lot and leaving their car out there. So some of them actually told us that if it continues and if it does go that direction, they may look for other venues, which would be a major impact to us. We are self-sustained. What we can generate from our revenues is what we make plus TRT. That's it. We can't afford, to have clients start pulling stakes and going to Lynn County or somebody else that's just up the road. In general, we appreciate, and I think the clients don't want to be seen as negative to the issue, but they're looking at it as a business. And so from their perspective as a business, they don't feel it would fit. And so my job, at least what I feel my job is to advocate for the client, the user of the facility, the one that's spending the money. And so we wouldn't support it at this time under what I've heard so far as a proposal. It's not saying that there's not something else out there that's appropriate, but I haven't seen it yet.
Thank you for addressing that. Commissioner Farr, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I do. When we consider what shelter looks like for unhoused people, I think without actually showing what shelter does and can look like for unhoused people, if you just say, what do you think about a homeless camp on the fairgrounds, many people may remember what Occupy Eugene looks like, and that's what they think of as a homeless camp. In reality, many shelters for previously unhoused people, whether they be veterans, whether they be mothers with children, whomever they may be, many of the shelters that have been established, not just in our community but elsewhere, you cannot really tell the difference between them and a surrounding neighborhood. If you look at Emerald Village's concept, for instance, that is in the process of being built, once that is built, and you take a look at that and show any of our clients and anyone, in fact, at all, what it looks like, they will acquiesce that it doesn't look like perhaps what they have in mind. The stereotype that people have surrounding homeless people is an unjust stereotype, because just like any walk of life, homeless and unhoused people are there for a variety of reasons, and the vast majority of all people sitting in this room or any place are not going to be roaming the halls stealing vendors' goods. That's just not the way it is. So now I'm not admonishing what you just said, Corey, by any means, and I understand the necessity of balancing the regular year-round use of the event center and the grounds surrounding the event center. But I throw a word out of caution to anybody who may be listening to me right now, that when you consider unhoused people and you consider shelters for unhoused people, they don't always look, in fact, they rarely look like what we saw under the Washington Jefferson Street Bridge. If you look at, for instance, even the emergency shelters and temporary shelters that are being set up, like the Nightingale facility that we have over, that is currently being relocated to the MLK property, it doesn't look at all like the traditional, if you just threw out the words homeless camp to people, they're going to think about what they've seen in the past. So as discussions go forward, being absolutely sensitive to the operation of the event center, bear in mind that whatever we may consider for any Lane County property at any time in the future, inside or outside of the city limits of Eugene, Springfield, or any other city limits, housing unhoused people is an essential part of what we have to do, and finding ways to do it in innovative and acceptable, universally acceptable fashion is something that we have to be we have to be continually looking to do. And once again, I'm not admonishing what you said, and I'm not admonishing by any stretch of the imagination, Corey, the fact that you asked our clients, what they thought about it. And by and large, people who haven't seen the Emerald Village concept, for instance, don't understand that it's going to look just like a neighborhood. Tiny houses, no doubt, but no piles of stuff outside, no rusting cars in the driveway, no tarps stretched over multiple tents, and no drug and alcohol use on the facilities. So it's, just painting the picture of what a homeless camp, unhoused shelter looks like is not something necessarily that people understand until they see the various types and the new innovative ways that are being used to do that. So once again, continue with your great relationship with your clients, with our clients, and look forward to furthering the conversation for the future. And if something down the road does happen that allows us to use a portion of any county property, Mr. Mokrahayski, which we've successfully done in the past, then that's still part of a larger conversation. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Sorensen.
Hey, thank you very much. On this topic, I know that there's a lot of moving parts to public policy, and I know Mayor Piercy had a big meeting in Portland with the mayors of some really big cities, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, about the homeless issue. I know that the city of Eugene has a number of interests in this problem throughout the city. I know their Parks Division has been involved in having parks, homeless people that are trained to be in parks and watch the parks. And of course, even Lane County's had a role in that. We have had some property over by Autzen Stadium that was used temporarily. So there's a lot going on. And with regard to the 55 acres that you're mostly focused on, is there something in particular that you were asking about? As far as I know, there's all these different ideas. There's HACSA that has affordable and low-income housing. There's all the way up to illegal camping like we had before. And I was wondering, is there something specific that you were aware of for the property? In other words, asking the customers, would you like this or this or this? Which one of those did you ask them about? Was it all the above, or just, hey, we've heard that there's interest around the community in doing this, and we want to know your attitude?
Yeah, the question as it was given to me was that it was a temporary shelter or temporary camp. So that is how we had the discussion. I'm not aware of other proposals or other opportunities for different things yet. I have not seen those. I've not been involved with those.
Yeah.
So the question was around a temporary camp, and I think that maybe maybe the word temporary versus permanent or something like that, maybe where there's a distinctive difference between the two, but it was a temporary camp is what we discussed.
Yeah, okay. And obviously, even if HACSA got involved and we were able to actually get some affordable housing, that's a completely different thing from, a camp. And that's got its own imagery, right?
I would assume that would have its own or a different image.
Is there any underutilized property at the fairgrounds that could be leased to HACSA or some other agency that's involved in housing? In other words, we've got a lot of different long-term plans, but is there something in the
It's possible.
Yeah. It would certainly, if the people organizing it brought money with them, that would be in keeping with the overall mission that we're not going to put major tax dollars into the operation of the fairgrounds. We haven't for a number of years. It's not likely we're going to. So trying to figure out a way to bring in dollars from a variety of sources would be something worth considering.
Well, yeah, there'd have to be a lot of probably time spent on logistics and whatnot. But
Exactly. Is the major concern of the vendors the mixing of the function of these, I won't call them homeless people, because if they had homes, they'd have homes, but these perhaps formerly homeless people, if they had a place to be, is there concern about the mixing, like the bathrooms and parking, and where if part of the advocate's interest is in, separating them from the fairgrounds with a fence, as has been done in some of these other facilities.
separation is a concern, security is a concern.
Yeah.
Some clients have thousands, if not, some of them have millions of dollars of equipment that are there during a show and that stays overnight, and security is a major issue. If they feel that they have to increase the cost to themselves by increasing security, then it's a less attractive place to hold their event.
Right, exactly, okay. And when the advocates for the homeless come to me and they say, what can you do, Pete? What can you do to help? Do you have some guidance for policymakers on what we can say? In other words, what would be, I clearly have heard you about security. Number one is security. Number two is this, what I'll call mixing, that is to have a good fences make good neighbors, as we say in Coos County. So, some separation. What other things are, money, would that sweeten the pot as far as that would make it a little more acceptable to the fair mission?
Money is always an issue. We feel a very good job of bringing in enough events, new events, and returning events that were financially stable, along with the TRT that those shows bring in. Anything that's going to impact the future ability to do that will be a consideration. So whether it's taking away land that you can't use anymore, whether that's one or two clients deciding to move somewhere else, those things will have an impact. It's not to say that they're not insurmountable, but they will be an impact.
Right.
I don't think we or the Fair Board at any time, has been looking at money as the driving force other than to sustain ourselves and improve ourselves. So capital projects, that's where, we're falling behind, have been for 15, 20 years. Any ability that we can to put money back into the facility to make improvements, we would like to do. If we start seeing that ability go away because of our revenues or our shows are dropping off, it's going to have another long-term impact. Eventually, we are going to have to come for money, either to fix things up, replace them, or do something else.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Mokajski, did you want to chime in here for a minute?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I just wanted to reiterate what Corey's indicated here, and again, try to make a distinction between temporary shelter versus permanent housing. I think what the Commissioners have received through emails and petitions and things and the requests that we've received from the City of Eugene and from other advocates has largely focused on the need for a public homeless shelter. And I think what you're hearing here today, and you've heard so far in the last several days, is a reflection on the fact that a number of people feel like having a public homeless shelter or tents or any other temporary shelter in what is essentially a gateway neighborhood, right? It's a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood that is also the home of our Lane Event Center and Fairgrounds. We're welcoming businesses and visitors into the area, creates a conflict that I think a lot of people are arguing is not in the best interest of the Lane Event Center, nor is it potentially in the best interest of the identifying solutions that the community can support generally for homelessness. And if you look at the locations, for example, the MLK property off of MLK, by our behavioral health facility, where we've utilized Lane County property for a temporary shelter, a rest stop run by Nightingale Health sanctuary. It's been intentionally located in an area that doesn't cause conflict with direct adjacency to residences, to schools, to businesses. Rather, it has complementary adjacencies, such as public services like mental health, substance abuse, and other things that individuals can access. So I think the primary point here from our perspective is to make sure that we keep in mind any location for temporary shelter, needs to consider the conflicts that are created there and then the other issues that are generated from those conflicts. As it relates to permanent shelter, I think or permanent housing, that's another conversation, and we're contemplating, what that could look like, and that's a policy decision that the board ultimately would have to weigh in on. But that's a very different permanent housing, as you refer to, Commissioner Sorensen, with HACSA or St. Vincent de Paul's. Those types of solutions are, I think, in many ways, if done in the right way, that would be complementary to the event center and complementary to the neighborhood. Could work in that environment. So I just want to help stress the need for a distinction between temporary shelter and permanent housing, and making sure we try to alleviate any actual or perceived conflicts in this critical area.
Thank you. And I think the discussion, particularly Commissioner Farr and Sorensen, kind of bring up, what we were being asked, and in the emails I received and the letters to the editor that were in the Register Guard and the Weekly, they specifically mentioned space for a homeless camp or rest stop. That was the facility they were looking to locate on the fairgrounds, and I think that's what you talk to your vendors about. And with those, there is, an unfortunate negative stereotype that follows what most people think of as a homeless camp versus maybe what we saw with the Nightingale Health Sanctuary, and even different from what permanent housing looks like and might be. And I think what this all speaks to is we need to not make any decisions around use of the event center for this particular purpose in a vacuum or quickly. It's something that needs to be a thoughtful discussion where we're discussing it with our customers that use and actually pay for the event center. We only have that there because it's in an enterprise fund that pays for itself, with the exception of some subsidy from transient room tax, which is specifically to bring out-of-town visitors, which the event center does, which is why it gets the taxes, and just how that fits in to the neighborhood and how it will actually help with the whole issue of housing folks. We really, I wish we didn't even need temporary camps and all that stuff, that we had enough permanent and transitional housing to move people into that had 4 walls and a door and a heating system and, a shower and a toilet and all that. And housing people in fenced-in campsites is really not what I would like to see be our vision of the future. I would like to see us move towards more permanent, which may be something that ultimately can work with the event center. But I think I brought it up mostly to have the discussion a little bit because it's something that's been pushed recently in public. But I want the public to hear that discussion so they understand that this is not something we can just lightly say, oh yeah, go ahead, whoever's, there's this corner of the fairgrounds, set up a camp there and have at it. There's a lot to consider about that. First of all, we're not really just the dictators, because there are 5 days a year that is the fairgrounds, and there's a different board that runs that we'd have to work in conjunction with. We would hope that we wouldn't make a decision of that magnitude without the concurrence of the fair board. And also we have to consider who actually uses the event center, who actually pays for that event center to run. So I appreciate the discussion on the tail end here of what was really a bunch of great news. I knew it was going to be a Debbie Downer to start talking about it, but I wanted to get it out in public, why we just are not immediately jumping on the idea. And I think Mr. Mokrahysky provided a very reasoned response to some of the people that have been emailing us, particularly addressing those issues of where we need to work with our vendors and our customers and really understand what's the best use of that additional space, and making sure, first of all, it's surplus space to begin with. And then secondly, to look at a use that's compatible, not in conflict. And I think we've had a good discussion of that here. Commissioner Farr.
Just one last thing, and this is in general. You know, Lane County has a poverty and homelessness board. It is a multi-jurisdictional board. It's not an intergovernmental committee. It's a committee that report recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, but it's made up of elected officials from different jurisdictions as well as private providers and some clients. And much of the discussion surrounding each type of homeless response goes through the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and quite often people who are writing letters aren't even aware that Lane County has a Poverty and Homelessness Board that is more or less a clearinghouse for a lot of the requests and types of responses to unhoused as well as other poverty issues. So, you know, the more people become accustomed to the fact that we do have a response in place that is a well-coordinated response, and it's not just an ad hoc, by the way, can we use this property response? It goes into a much larger picture with a much larger and more coordinated response through the Poverty and Homelessness Board. It's important that we continue to let people know that that is in place. It's not new. It is new. It's been around a little less than a year, but it involves, once again, elected officials from the cities of Eugene and Springfield, from Lane County, and it also involves, throw out a few names, people like Paul Solomon from Sponsors is on the board, Jacob Fox from HACSA is on the board, and Hugh Massengill, who we all know from the HACSA board, is on the board. So it's a pretty well-rounded board that addresses not just the ad hoc requests, but the broader picture of response to homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I was on record, I think at the last meeting, to suggest that I believe the Eugene City Hall, the vacant site for Eugene City Hall could also be looked at as a potential homelessness rest stop site as well, and hopefully that would be considered. Beans, we're going to talk about the event center, I guess, as well. So could you comment real quickly on the what I would classify as a success? I don't know what it was actually called, but I'm going to call it the Eugene Comic-Con. And because I actually went there with my sons. My youngest son actually will recognize every single character you can possibly imagine. I got the usual: Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, and that was about it. And maybe throw in a Thor there. Can you comment on that? Because when we went there, I was shocked on how long the line was just to get in. I was blown away. I had no clue. So if you could comment on that. And I believe it was the first year. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was the first year, and that's, I think, why you saw that line is these promoters always hope that they're going to hit a home run and that people are all going to come down, but they never know, and that was one that literally hit a home run. I was receiving phone calls and texts from my friends saying, I am stuck in this line. Any hints? And I'm like, I got nothing for you. It was impressive, and we're really looking forward to working with that promoter. I think could turn into one really impressive returning event. It was a nice show.
Well, I would hope so. Like I said, I went with my son to be supportive, and my oldest son, not quite, but my youngest son, I'm telling you, he knew every single character you can possibly imagine that was walking in there. And what was really interesting, I won't mention his name in public, but we'll just say a well-known person who works in one of the television stations, does a lot of camera work. When he took off a Star Wars mask, I went, well, I'll be darned. So, so you never know who we'll see there. But I thought it was great. And I got to tell you, some people do amazing work on their costumes when they show up. I mean, some of them look like the real deal. But by the way, Star Wars is opening this weekend, so it should be kind of interesting. Thank you.
And with that, is there anything else? Well, thank you for the very positive and upbeat report on the fair, and all the great work you did, and thank you to the Fair Board for coming today. Thank you. And with that, we will move on. We have County Council announcements. I know we have an exec session today. Do you know if there are any other announcements from County Council?
Not that I'm aware of.
Then we'll move on to county administration announcements. Mr. Mokrzycki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, a couple of things. I will share with you an update on our discussions with Mr. Magnuson, and I did, sorry that I stepped out, but I wanted to have an opportunity to just chat briefly with Mr. Magnuson. We did do that. We've been working on schedules and calendars and trying to get, we do have a meeting scheduled for January 8th, but I've asked Mr. Kincaid to come down and talk to Mr. Magnuson, see if we can get something set up this week to try to get at least the primary issue resolved around the ownership of one of the manufactured structures there. So as I shared with you last week, I met with the assessor, with Marcia Miller and our legal counsel after the public testimony, I believe 2 weeks ago. So I think we have an understanding of the information that we need. I'm hopeful that some of the information Mr. Magnuson provided today will aid in resolving at least one issue and allow the partition to move forward. So, what I can tell you is that we're actively working to try to get resolution to the issues that we can control at this stage, and particularly the higher priority ones for Mr. Magnuson. So I'll report to you after, once we have some decisions and movement there. Second, I wanted to share with the board that we are planning, and get your feedback if you agree or disagree here. We are planning, we've done public hearings both for the Fern Ridge Policing District as well as when we've gone out on ballot measures in the past. We've done public hearings. We're not required to do that for the OSU request for a 5-year levy, but given our past practice, our feeling is that we should follow the past practice that we have pursued. And so we were scheduling, I believe we were looking at January 5th to do the public hearing on the OSU extension request for a 5-year levy. So I just want to make sure the commissioners are supportive of that process. And if you'd like, I can share kind of a tentative timeline. We do a public hearing on January 5th. On January 12th, the order creating the voters pamphlet explanatory statement committee. January 26th would be the order calling for the election. February 26th would be the last day for the board to forward the text for the language of referral, and then March 10th is when the voter pamphlet arguments are due. So it's a tentative timeline for the OSU extension, but again, just want to share that with you. Our plan is to bring forward a public hearing on January 5th.
Excellent. Anything else?
A couple other items that I wanted to share with you. First, met yesterday, and we will be meeting, I'll be meeting at least on a quarterly basis with our human resource staff, our budget and finance staff, and our employee health insurance consultants that we work with as we transition from a fully funded to a self-funded plan on August 1st. I want to make sure that we're regularly tracking how we're doing. This is a new venture, and of course we know there's some risk associated there. And so I wanted to report to the board in the first 3 months of going self-funded, so including August, September, and October, if you compare those 3 months of total self-insured costs, so that includes our claims, our stop-loss premium, admin costs, and then a claim reserve fund, which we're building up in the first 3 months. You take all the total self-insurance costs for those first 3 months compared to had we have stayed fully funded and the fully insured premium cost, the net savings that we've identified is approximately $427,000 countywide in the first 3 months. Again, understand that, there's some lag effect in moving to the self-funded plan and closing out claims, and prior to that, and then moving folks over. So we really need a good year's data to be able to report back on what we're seeing and experiencing. But I at least wanted to provide to the board that we have developed a dashboard, and we're going to be meeting and discussing this on a regular basis. I'll just share a couple other. We have 257 retirees on our plan, approximately 5 COBRA enrollees, and then approximately 1,200 active enrollees. And those would be members. So it doesn't include individual, employees who have dependents, spouse and dependents on their plans. But active enrollees is about 1,200, retirees is about 257. So a lot more information there, but I just, more than anything, want to share with the board that we're going to be spending a lot of time analyzing and understanding what's happening with our health insurance costs, and continue to focus on that issue and do everything we can to invest in wellness opportunities for our employees, get employees back to work quicker, and ultimately manage, stabilize, and reduce our health insurance costs over time. I think we have maybe one more minute, Mr. Chair. I'll just wrap up here and say we also completed the Race Around the World initiative, which was a wellness initiative that we implemented, and it was voluntary, but we had 262 participants, over 20 teams throughout Lane County. Health and Human Services, the Sheriff's Office, District Attorney, Human Resources, Public Works, Finance, Assessment and Taxation, County Administration, participation throughout Lane County, 262 individuals. And we know, this is really important, we know physical inactivity is the 4th leading risk factor for global mortality. Globally, 1 in 3 adults is not active enough, based on statistics from the World Health Organization. And so it's one of the reasons that we're trying to incentivize and encourage healthy and active behavior of all of our employees. So we did an 8-week initiative, and we had 22 teams, an average of 304,000 steps per member, a total of over 83 million steps by the individuals who participated. So just some fun information. Again, this is intended to incentivize and encourage health and wellness throughout our organization. And can I just take 30 more seconds, Mr. Chair, or would you like to do it?
Sure, I think.
Back. Okay. We also launched finally a Lane-Genuity initiative, and this is it's a play on ingenuity, right? It's a continuous improvement program for our employees to allow employees to be nominated or self-nominate if they've implemented a creative continuous improvement initiative. And so I want to share 2 with you. One is Christine Rogers in Health and Human Services. She updated the Office Assistant Training Program to reflect current standards and integrated multiple learning styles to increase engagement. New training has been well received and has been successful. So we'll be honoring Christine with an award as one of our first Lane-Genuity nominees. We also had someone who asked not to be named. They were happy to be recognized and nominated for it, but they said they didn't need the personal recognition. This individual presented this continuous improvement initiative to their department staff and created a recognition wall to quickly share the information. So again, this is an effort to try to capture stories where we have our employees that are implementing outstanding continuous improvement efforts, and also recognize the great work that's happening from our talented employees. So we'll share more of these. We have different tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 3 folks are really large initiatives that have a significant impact in the organization. We'll be bringing those to the board and actually ask the board to recognize the employees that do that great work. So more to come on that, but I just wanted to share we have awarded 2 of our outstanding employees with that great effort. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. And before we jump to the time certain here, I just want to confirm, do we need to give you 3 head nods to set that hearing on the 5th for the OSU Extension Service serial levy? And do you need us to set a time certain for that, like a 1:30 time certain on the 5th?
I don't know that I want to do a time certain, because I want to check with staff to see what our schedule looks like on the 5th, but I think head nods would be great, just to indicate that the board is supportive of coming forward with a public hearing based on prior discussions.
I see 1 there. I see 2. I see 3. So I think okay. You've got the confirmation that we're good with having the hearing on the 5th for that.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll leave it to you and staff for time certain, but I imagine the folks from OSU would probably prefer to have a time certain, because I'm sure they're going to want to be here to talk about why they asked us to push this forward.
Yeah, and we'll coordinate that with them.
Great. Then moving on, and I apologize for being 4 minutes late, to item 10B, Order 1512-1510, in the matter of approving the extension of the temporary Lane County Internal Audit Charter and Temporary Audit Committee. And then we have a couple other items about this that we'll move to right after that. So I will turn this over to Shonda. if you want to introduce
Good morning,
your
Chair.
guests also.
Good morning, Commissioners. There are members of the Temporary Internal Audit Committee here today. We have Commissioner Spar and Commissioner Lyken, County Administrator Steve Mokrahysky, and then I have Dennis Hidgmans here, who's a committee member, and also Dennis is a citizen member of the Lane County Budget Committee as well. And then we have some non-voting members. I see Christine Moody in the audience. So for this agenda item, the board is being asked to approve the extension of the current authority over the performance audit function until the effective date of the recommended Lane Code and Lane Manual amendments. The Lane Code amendment to be introduced in the agenda item to follow, and a Lane Manual amendment were both recommended by the Temporary Internal Audit Committee. This motion for an extension recognizes that the process and implementation of these recommended policy amendments, including board consideration and action, will take some time and extend beyond the end of this month, December 2015, which is when the temporary charter and committee are currently set to expire. So, and in addition to asking the board to extend the current authority as we go through the approval and implementation process, I would also like to take this opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the Temporary Audit Committee for its work over the last year. A little over a year ago, in November 2014, the board selected the Temporary Internal Audit Committee as the hiring interview committee for the county performance auditor position. And in January of this year, the board approved the committee's recommendation for the appointment of myself, Shanda Miller, as the county performance auditor. In the spring and early summer, I provided updates to the committee on the enterprise-wide risk assessment that I conducted, and the committee discussed and provided feedback on the results of that risk assessment and the potential audit topics that emerged from that assessment. In July, the committee approved recommending the proposed fiscal year 15-16 work plan to the board for approval, and the committee also approved recommending the draft strategic plan for the performance audit function to the board for approval. In August, the board approved the committee's recommendations for the fiscal year 15-16 work plan and the strategic plan. And then also in August, the committee provided input on my 6-month performance evaluation and summarized this input in a letter to the board. And this fall, the Temporary Internal Audit Committee worked with me to develop policy documents for the performance audit function. And last month, on November 24th, the committee approved motions recommending to the board a Lane Code amendment and Lane Manual amendment. If I may, Chair Bozovich, I'd like to provide Commissioner Farr, as the chair of the Temporary Internal Audit Committee, with the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you. And Ms. Miller, thank you for your professional work in guiding and helping form the work of the committee. You know, the committee had a pretty substantial charge to develop the code language and develop the Lane Manual language, as well as a strategic plan and a work plan for the performance auditor. We met at least monthly, and Mr. Hidgman joined us partway through the process and provided a great deal of input. In fact, in many cases, changing the direction of some of the items we were working on regarding the Lane Code and the Lane Manual. And what we have before us today is draft language for the Lane Code and the Lane Manual. We had hoped that we could conclude the work of the committee today, but in fact, because of the necessity of having a first and second reading on the ordinance, that pushed it 2 weeks beyond this date. Otherwise, we would be completed with what was a very aggressive schedule and really a daunting schedule in getting all the things done that we had done. But wanted to mention that we're in the process now of handing off the baton from the temporary Performance Audit Committee to what is going to be the regular permanent Performance Audit Committee. The timing on that will be determined by the board, but the timing is not absolutely critical, in that a part of the work of the temporary committee was helping Ms. Miller develop a work plan that's been approved by the board, and develop a strategic plan that has been approved by the board at this point in time. And Ms. Miller's work plan is already in progress. In fact, Ms. Miller, could you just take a few moments to describe where you are in process on your work plan and what the timeline is moving forward with your work plan?
Sure, I'd be happy to. There are 4 projects on the fiscal year 15-16 work plan. 2 of them were administrative projects and 2 are actual audits. The first administrative project is operating structure implementation, and that project is complete, and it included developing a procedure manual for the performance audit function, some templates that I can use, and then also an electronic work paper system. So I've got that in place, and that's complete. The second administrative project is a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline implementation project, and this is still in progress. The first step of that was to develop some policies and procedures for the hotline, and with the help of an internal staff committee, 2 policy documents have been drafted. The first is a fraud prevention policy for inclusion in Lane Manual, and the second is a fraud prevention reporting and investigation procedures document to be added to the Administrative Procedures Manual. And actually, this Thursday, December 17th, the Finance and Audit Committee will have the opportunity to review those 2 policy documents. So for the 2 performance audits on my work plan, the first one, the financial indicators audit, I actually began that audit last week, and I've really hit the ground running on that, and I have a tight scope and timeline for that. My plan is to release that audit report in mid-March. And the purpose of this audit is to assess and report on the financial health of the county using financial indicators. And the second audit planned is the behavioral health audit, which I plan to begin in February. And this audit will be a review of behavioral health services system-wide.
Excellent. So what you've outlined is a work in progress that is going to take you well into close to the middle of next year. And the first project we're hoping to conclude by March, which is a pretty aggressive timeline. But I have full confidence that that timeline will be met. The only thing that is really holding Ms. Miller back as far as the broader scope of audits that have already been prescribed and are further out in the work plan is that currently it's an office of 1. We have the performance auditor, and that is the office. Ms. Miller did use an intern for a short period of time, which helped move some of the progress on the earlier stages of development of the job forward. And at some point in the future, I would expect that Ms. Miller is going to present the board perhaps with an option for either intern work or some other work inside of the office that potentially could give us the choice of moving some of the audits a little bit closer up on the timeline, a little bit, so that instead of, for instance, doing 2 audits simultaneously, you may be able to do maybe 3 or 4 audits simultaneously. Is that correct or close?
I could probably say, for example, I would expect myself to be able to do 4 audits a year. Perhaps with an intern, I could do 6 or 7. Yeah.
And that is something that is down the road. It's not something that's that any recommendation is coming forward, but the board will have a choice as we look at the importance of the audits that are being recommended and the risk that's associated with the audits, then it's a direction that we could go. But I wanted to take a moment to thank the board, and Mr. Hidgman, as you're here today, do like to invite you to say a few words about what you think about the process and how we got to the point that we're at today.
Well, as I've said before, I've been associated with Lane County for almost 40 years as an employee and member of various volunteer groups, including 11 years on the Budget Committee. And I believe at this point we have a very beneficial and unusual event, and that is that we have found the exact right person at the exact right time to do the exact right function. And performance auditing in the county has had a history, not necessarily commendable history, but I think given this state with the present board, the present county administrator, we are onto something. unprecedented in my mind. And the other part of the auditing process is we're not going into this blindly. We're not going into this without guidance. This is what's known as the Yellow Book, and I became aware of earlier this year. But this sets out a tremendous amount of standards, ethical responsibilities, techniques, description of what independence is, and so on and so forth. So we're not inventing the wheel for the first time. We have some tremendous government standards from the United States government comptroller to help guide us. So I am very, very optimistic on this process. I find it to be incredibly important and valuable, I think, as we go forward, particularly in budget and as we're perceived by the community on the whole.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchens. The entire committee is here with the exception of Sheriff Trapp, who I spoke to yesterday evening. He had a conflict early in the meeting. He may still arrive, but Sheriff Trapp is the fifth voting member of the committee. Included in the lane code language is and lane manual language is the makeup of the permanent committee, which we can discuss. But the only other thing that I would like to say before I ask Commissioner Lycan to say some words, if you're prepared to, is that this is in the interest of open and accountable government. The reason that we went down this road to begin with was it began about, probably even before 3 years ago when we first started talking about accountability and performance auditing. Not financial auditing, we have that in place, but performance auditing and risk assessment. And I just wanted to mention that we do have a risk manager who Ms. Miller has been working with on a regular basis, and I think that we're moving forward in the right direction as far as integrating the position into the work of the county and providing open and accountable government, which is something that has been the hallmark of Mr. Mokryhaiski's work since he came here. Sid.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr. First of all, Dennis, I'm glad you brought that book, and because I think it's really important, and it kind of goes without saying on how much is actually involved in the auditing process. Not only the standards that are set, but really, I mean, anytime there's a performance audit in place, it's going to be scrutinized, and so I appreciate you bringing that. I mean, it's a pretty thick book, and the other thing you mentioned about Shanda being the right person in the right place, I couldn't agree more. I mean, frankly, it's very obvious that the Secretary of State did a great job in training you and really put you in this position. It's interesting because I think Mr. Blackmore is actually retiring. And when we were going through this process about the audit, I remember Commissioner Sorensen actually brought up Mr. Blackmore's name as a person that we should be in contact with and really having that dialogue and conversation with as far as whether we, in a sense, performance auditing is done by an outside firm or having an auditor in place. And it really, I think we made clearly the right decision of making sure we have an auditor here and directly in place here instead of using an outside firm. And so I think that's it'll be important. But Shanda, first of all, I think you really, in a sense, made our job pretty easy as far as the committee's concerned. I think the direction that you provided as far as in a sense, as the oversight and really making sure that the work we're bringing before the board eventually hear a vote. I really want to say thank you for that. Your experience really showed, and I think it made our work, I think, pleasant, and it's never easy, but in a sense, it almost was. And so that's really a credit to your experience and as being a performance auditor. And Dennis, I really want to say thank you to you. As a citizen member, your input was, to me, very valuable, and I think that's very helpful in going forward. But I think Commissioner Farr really stated our goals and what we were trying to accomplish, and so what you have before us today, the first reading is on the two I better put my glasses on so I can actually read. So, first reading on the ordinance, I think will be is important today, but also the fact that just extending this out for a couple weeks will be important as we go through the process. But thank you very much, and to Commissioner Farr, thank you for the chairing this committee. The work we did here was very good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So any questions for Shonda or further discussion? Then I would entertain a motion. Commissioner Stewart.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of Order 15-12-15-10 on the matter of approving the extension of the temporary Lane County Internal Audit Charter and temporary Internal Audit Committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So with that, we'll move to item 10C, which is the first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing on Ordinance 1509 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 2 to create county performance auditor position. And again, I'll turn it over to you, Shonda, for a brief description.
Yes. So again, this lane code amendment was recommended by the Temporary Internal Audit Committee, and this agenda item is for the first reading and to set the second reading and public hearing for Ordinance 1509 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 2 to create the county performance auditor position, and that's Lane Code 2.130. And I don't have it in the agenda, but I'm recommending setting the second reading for January 12th. Staff has informed me that it looks like 1:30 p.m. could be a good time to do that. So we could add that to the motion for setting the second reading.
I'm going to look to the administrator real quick. Is the 12th, 1:30, is that already the Fern Ridge Public Safety District hearing?
Let me look. I may or may not be able to answer that on the spot here.
I have to go back and look at the...
It looks like we do have a public hearing on the formation of the district on January 12th. I'm not...
Doesn't have a time certain.
I don't see a time certain. That doesn't mean there...
I think we could probably deal with both in the same afternoon, but just want you to be aware we already have one public hearing scheduled that day. Commissioner Stewart.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move the first reading and set the second reading and public hearing for Ordinance 15-09 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 2 to create county performance auditor position, setting the public hearing for January the 12th, 1:30 p.m. at Harris Hall.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Commissioner Farr.
Just briefly, the code language is short. Very little code language involved. Most of the description and the procedure for the job will be contained in Lane Manual, which can be changed without ordinance. It can be changed by board order as opposed to by ordinance. So what we'll be approving on discussing second reading and potentially approving on January 12th is code language that requires ordinance to change.
Yes.
Thank you. So any further discussion to the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis, for being here.
So that moves us on to item 10D, which is a report and update, approval of the county administrator's goals as outlined by the Board of Commissioners at the annual evaluation. And I believe we've gotten a copy of this both by email and it is also up on the website, the draft. And I'll turn this over to Mr. Mokrzycki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So this is a follow-up from the discussion in June of 2015, June of this year, when you conducted my annual evaluation. And we wanted to wait until we had an updated strategic plan and we knew where the board wanted to go with your priorities, objectives, and goals there to incorporate where necessary any of those into my goals. So this is now before you. I'll just make a few comments here, go through it, and then I'd like your feedback if the goals that I've outlined here, which I've tried to separate into areas consistent with the board's priorities. So we have safe, healthy county goals, vibrant community goals, and then infrastructure, both internal and external infrastructure, we're making the distinction around. So again, my annual review was June 23rd, 2015. The board talked about, not only did a review for the first year, but also talked about goals for the coming year, so I've incorporated those into that. We've taken comments from last week's work session on the strategic plan, as well as areas that I'm working on and that we've discussed here at the board and have risen to a high priority. So under Safe and Healthy County, we have a goal, we have 3 goals. One is to focus on implementation of the public safety plan, including the Fern Ridge Public Safety District. Again, these are issues that tend to evolve over time. So the Fern Ridge issue has evolved more recently, and we feel like that's an area that we're focusing on that has a connection to the public safety plan. Bringing the leadership team together with the budget committee, and I think Mr. Hidgman's had to leave, but that is something that we've talked about and I would like to do in advance of the actual budget process, to sit down with the budget committee and the board and our leadership team and talk about the process that we're planning to go through for the budget and make sure we have agreement there. And then also a focus on the community health centers. There's been a lot of positive activity, and we have 6 clinics that are now opening, the newest one at the Delta Oaks Clinic, and one of the areas that I want to make sure that we're focusing on is with all of the positive success and reimbursement that we're receiving, and physicians and providers that we're hiring and clinics that we're opening, that we're also planning for the future, planning for changes in the potential changes in the Affordable Care Act, changes in reimbursement rates and how they could either positively or negatively impact the services that we're providing at our community health centers. So that's a sort of a forward-thinking planning effort. Under Vibrant Communities, a focus on community and economic development initiatives we've talked about, and we've worked with the Hatfield Fellows. We'll be coming back to the board in early 2016 with an update on really what has been very well received in the rural communities, particularly in Florence and up the McKenzie. These are Hatfield Fellows. Aniko and Steve have just done an outstanding job under the leadership of our community and economic development staff, Glenda and Sarah and Kathy, to increase the amount of support and work that we're doing in rural economic development. So continued focus and expansion on that effort, as well as a focus on areas like Glenwood and Springfield and redevelopment of downtown Eugene, which we have a number of parcels in. And combined with that, solution in economic development, solutions to poverty, homelessness, and mental health that I have talked about regularly. Also, the implementation of our new equity and human rights plan, which the board has supported. And then under infrastructure, again, which we're talking both about internal and external. And for internal infrastructure being, the work, human resources and financial management and personnel and those kind of things. External being parks and roads and facilities. So a continued focus on a balanced budget and financial management, implementation of our self-funded health insurance plan, which we gave you an update on this morning, implementation of the board strategic plan. I counted about 60 goals, so we've added 2. It's hard to reduce that number because they're all really good things that we're working actively on. So implementation of that, as well as continue to work with our departments and integrate department strategic planning with the board's strategic planning efforts. Partnering with our new performance auditor to identify successes, challenges, and solutions to make Lane County the best. So that's an exciting one that I'm really looking forward to working in partnership with our new auditor. Enhancing internal and external communication, and we have a number of initiatives that we're pursuing on that front. Continue to create a high-performance team of leaders, and I'll just make a comment that, boy, I feel great about the team of folks that we have in this organization, folks who've been here for a long time and bring great experience and historical knowledge and background and folks that we brought to our team more recently. I think we have a really great, balanced, focused group of leaders and staff in our organization. We are going to continue to see transition and turnover. We're seeing some retirements. We have the VSIP program, and in early January I'll report to the board on how that has turned out. But there will continue to be a need for succession planning and making sure that we're moving through the transitions in an effective way, recruiting and retaining the best talent, implementing training and professional development, and doing evaluations in the continuous improvement program that I mentioned earlier. And then creating this team culture. That's changing a culture in an organization takes a long time. It doesn't happen, frankly, in the course of a year. It happens over several years, but it's an area of focus that I want to continue to see us move towards, that we have some really large, important departments that are providing outstanding services, but over many years, a lot of our areas have focused on their areas without a really good alignment to what the overall vision and purpose of the organization as a whole is. And I want to make sure that we're bringing together the critical services and functions in the field with the overall purpose and vision for our organization. So there will be a lot to come on that front. Recognizing the accomplishments of our staff, both publicly and privately, continuing with what we've laid out for our Park Master Plan update process. So those are the things that I've laid out here, and I welcome your feedback on those and any other goals that you'd like to see me pursue. And then these will become the foundation for my annual review in June of 2016.
Questions or comments from the board? I'd just like to say I think you captured really well the discussions we had during both the annual review, and then in addition, what we discussed as we were looking at the strategic plan update. I particularly, like seeing even some of the changes since then, like wrapping in the Fern Ridge Community Policing District into the goals, and the Park Master Plan update into the goals, as that kind of has morphed and changed and flexed and is moving ahead. So the goals are not only what we talked about during your annual review, but it's also even wrapped in some recent changes and have been flexible. So I appreciate that. Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And Steve, I think you've captured it well, and I appreciate that in light of the fact that we have some folks that are going to transition maybe into retirement, and I appreciate the succession planning that's necessary to replace those folks or move key leadership through the organization as needed. And then I also appreciated the fact that you've continued to put in here supporting the department plans as they move forward to their plans coincide with the priorities and goals of the county. So I appreciate that. I'm a firm believer that we're setting goals and missions for the organization. We need those to filter down through the organization so that I think the staff can say, hey, we're doing it with the strategic plan and the mission and goal state, and incorporate it within their own department. So thank you for that.
Mr. Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to echo what you say. I think that, since you came on board, Steve, you put in place a strategic plan, and I've just witnessed you building and strengthening the strategic plan without changing the overall goals of it. I think we're moving toward a very clear vision for the county that is articulated and understood throughout the personnel of the county. To me, that's the important part of moving forward as an organization, is that everybody knows the direction we're going, and that whatever we're doing and whenever we're expending energy in the county, it's moving in the stated direction that we're wanting to go in terms of the strategic plan. And I just want to add something that you kind of brushed on ever so slightly, and that's the quality of the staff that you have brought on board since you joined us. I was standing on a very windy and snowy day in Washington, D.C. when you called and I accepted the job, and there was a pretty big risk on your part to come to Lane County. You're moved into brand new, you brought your family into a new place, and you assumed a risk, as everyone assumes a risk when somebody takes a job, the people who hire you and the person who's being hired. But I think that I'm pretty pleased, once again, with the strategic plan that's in place, that you're coordinating it with, for instance, the community health improvement plan that we have in place, and that everything is moving in the same direction. We're not wasting energy as an organization. It really is particularly impressive to me and particularly satisfying to me. And once again, touch on the quality of the individuals who have come on board since you joined us, and across the board, the folks. I'm not going to name names now, although I could. And each name I name, people say, "Wow, really? Yep, you're right." We just have a tremendous upswing and forward swing in the direction that we're going, based upon who has joined you on your staff. So thanks for the well-written synopsis here, and look forward to working with you as we move forward on the evaluation. Thank you.
Any further questions, Commissioner Sellers?
I just wanted to say how pleased I think things are going, and I appreciate your leadership.
Well, sounds like
Ditto.
Yep. Ditto from Mr. Light. Sounds like we have concurrence here with your goals, and we'll be looking at those, I guess, in about 6 months here.
And the only other thing I would add, Mr. Chair, is that I would like to come back in advance of the June review to have a discussion with the board about the process, just to make sure. We didn't really do that last time. I sort of brought you the process and the review form and everything. I'd like to have a public conversation about, here's the process that I'm suggesting for that review, and then get your feedback, so that's all clear and transparent as we go into that June timeframe. So, potentially February, March, I'll come back and have a discussion with you about that.
Excellent. Demonstrating forward thinking and leadership as we go. So moving on, item 11A is Commissioner's Business Announcements. Any announcements from Commissioners? Commissioner Lyken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to report, so yesterday I had mentioned in the remonstrance that I was in Portland at the Leadership Summit, and this year they tried something a little bit different. So Duncan Wise, who started this conference summit some 14 years ago, actually set up different dinners through the evening to really help get maybe rural commissioners connected with Mid-Valley legislators, Portland legislators connected with more Mid-Valley commissioners, along with business folks. So last night, Duncan actually joined us at our table, but we ended up having let's see here. We had Mike Golub, who is which, by the way, he was still coming off his high. He's the president of business operations for the Portland Timbers. And, of course, just won the MLS championship. Andrew McCulloch, who used to live down here. He used to be the administrator for Sacred Heart Hospital in Eugene. He's now the CEO of Kaiser Permanente. And, of course, they now have a presence down here in Lane County. And then also a really interesting young gentleman named, and he is young, named Joaquin Lippincott, and he owns a company called Metal Toad. And you can imagine it's a high-tech firm. They always come up with these. But downtown Portland, he employs 45 people right now. I'm guessing he may be, looking at him, I didn't ask his age, but I'm going to guess he's probably the early 30s at the top. And a young guy expects to expand and his business. But what we were talking about is really about how it's just not just about Portland, the Valley, Southern Oregon, Eastern Oregon, rural Oregon versus urban, but how we're all in this together. And I think there was some common denominators, the way I came away from it. And so much so that there's going to be some follow-up, I think, with each of the folks that were there. Senator Byard joined us, which was nice, and to have one of our senators from here. But I thought it was I thought it was worthwhile. Hopefully it's just something they'll continue to do. But I had mentioned or had visited with some of the commissioners on the east side, and they were actually going to also be visiting with some of the Portland area, the Tri-County area legislators as well, and just talk about what are the common areas throughout the entire state we can work on. So I thought it was a really good idea that was done last night, and I just want to report on that my opinion, I came away with it being successful, and hopefully this is a trend that'll continue on.
Thank you, Commissioner Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wanted to share that last Friday we had the annual meeting for the ONC Counties Association. In the morning we had presentations from the BLM, different directors for their different areas, and also the state director. Wanted to announce that the state director, you may already know this, is transitioning down to be the state director in California. So for approximately the next 6 months, we will have the deputy director from Montana representing the state. Also wanted to share that in the annual election process, I asked to not be considered for the executive board and vice chair, and did remain. I got elected to the board, and so I'll keep you updated on the process. Wanted to also share that Mr. Perez says that he hopes to have the draft record of a decision presented, I believe it's late March, early April, with expecting that to be signed hopefully in June or early July. So looks like we may have a resource management plan adopted hopefully the first part of the summer.
Other announcements? So I'll reiterate the Veneta City Council adopted or co-adopted the ordinance and opted into the Fern Ridge Community Policing District last night on a 5-0 vote. Just want to remind folks the State of the County is coming up on January 4th at 11 o'clock. So make sure you've got that saved on your calendars. And then I want to just remind, as the agenda team is looking at developing all those first of the year board orders, one of them is board assignments for committees and advisory committees, et cetera. If there's a strong desire for a change in your board assignments, if you wouldn't mind letting the agenda team know. So far I have not heard any major desires one way or the other. But Faye and I need to kind of let Diana know so she can at least get something up on the website around Christmas time for that first meeting. So, any other announcements? How about agenda team requests, work session requests? Seeing and hearing none, then we'll move into executive session, and from executive session, the items we have will not require decision, so we will recess out of executive session for lunch, and then we'll be back in here at 1:30, reconvene at 1:30. So the Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 1926602D, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed above. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decisions may be made in executive session. And again, we will recess from executive session for lunch and reconvene at 1:30 here in Harris Hall. We are recessed, and we will reconvene in the Board of Commissioners conference room in 5 minutes.
I have no idea what it is they're talking about.